It's nearly time for the next big Overwatch Esports tournament, the mid-season championship, also known as the Esports World Cup. We're back at it for the second year in a row, a 4-day gauntlet starting this Thursday where 16 teams compete for a $1 million prize pool out in Riyadh. This year has a bunch of familiar faces, but also some old ones as well, alongside some slight alterations to the format compared to last year. And today I'm giving you an all-inclusive guide to this event to explain all of that, plus how I believe this tournament likely goes. Let's get started. So just like last year, this event is split into two sections. There's a group stage and the main tournament. The group stage has 4 groups of 4, all playing each other over the span of the first 2 days. The main tournament will be in the final 2 days with 8 teams in a single elimination bracket. Also worth noting is that on the group stage side of things, there is going to be multiple streams going on at once. I'll leave links to those streams in the description so you can keep up. It's a bit of a multi-viewing process. I know some people won't love it, but that's how we're going to get through this all in time in just 4 days. As for the qualifyees, they come from 7 regions: North America, EMEA, Korea, Japan, Pacific, China, and South America. They all made it through their own respective tournaments, and based on the placements, here are the groups we have. I'd argue that there's a lot more things to say about some groups compared to others, but we'll get more into detail with that in a little while. For now, I wanted to take some time to go through these rosters and how I feel about them heading into this tournament, give you a bit of a team preview for each of them. For the heck of it, I'll throw them into tiers as well. So obviously, let's start with Korea. At the top of the food chain is Crazy Raccoon, without question. They've been a consistent league dominator since the inception of OWCS, and their journey through Korea so far has been more of the same. Initially, there were some questions about this team after they lost 3 straight games not all that long ago, but they quickly silenced the crowd by once again getting first place in a main tournament. It was like those seeding decider matches were a warm-up, like they were just trying to give themselves an extra challenge or something. But regardless, this team has shown they can still be clutch when they need to be, and they've got the adjustments under wraps, and that's all that truly matters. At the core of this team is the same mold that we've grown used to, a well-balanced, destructive monster. This team has been on a tear to start the year, and I'm sure they're looking to go back-to-back in the Esports World Cup. And as of right now, they've got to be the favorites without question. They're the best overall team with LAN animals like Shu, Lip, and Heesang, who's really caught fire lately on that flex DPS role. Now, from what I can tell, at least from watching the Last Chance qualifier, it seems like more rushed favored compositions could be coming into the light, which obviously isn't Crazy Raccoon's favorite thing in the world, but they do have the manpower at tank with Junbin and Max for different playstyles, plus that ability to force what they want to play anyway in certain scenarios. As far as any of us should be concerned, there's really only 1, 2, I guess 3 teams tops that can even compete, and even that is likely pushing it. This team has the track record and they've shown they're built for success, so they're going to be very tough to beat. As for who some of those teams could be that I'm alluding to, I think you immediately point fingers at T1, who proved to be a very worthwhile adversary for them, and also another team that I consider to be in the S tier heading into this tournament. A resurgent stage 2 saw this team go from not even top 4 in Korea to a lock for number 2. This team put in the work during their off time, and it is paying off big time. A completely different team in so many ways. They felt more whole, and honestly, more sure of what they were doing in general. The momentum from standout performers like Donghack and Proud kept on rolling, but they also got more contributions from the likes of Zest, who seems to be getting more into his Overwatch League form as time goes on, as well as Vigilante, who's doing a good job of making that backline more functional compared to when they had Opener on the team. T1 are an example of what hard work and development looks like, and being the clear-cut number 2 while defeating Crazy Raccoon multiple times in a short span is one hell of a leap. They're a genuine threat to win this tournament, and nobody should be surprised if they make a run. They can handle pressure, they've got leadership at multiple roles. Now we can just hope that they can keep it going, because they may be one of the only teams that truly have a chance in this thing. Well, that and maybe one other team. I'd like to throw Team Falcons in there as well as a real contender. I'm not going to put them S tier because of how they've played in recent months, but I think due to their potential, they really can't go any lower than they, and they're obviously borderline S, knowing what they can be. But look, they made it, right? Just barely, but they're here. It took a generational fall off and having to go through a last chance qualifier, but they've still got a shot at this thing. Now obviously, knowing what they had to go through, not a very good look for them, especially with the talent they're rocking. They had a pretty hard time integrating their new players to the roster, and I think that, plus some obvious things behind the scenes, and some burnout, had us questioning if they'd even be here to begin with. Honestly, I was pretty surprised with how much of a breeze the last chance qualifier was. Even Zeta Division, a very worthy rival of theirs throughout the last couple of years, got absolutely curb stomped, and for me that definitely set off some alarms. They almost never blow Zeta out, so that was a very positive takeaway. After taking some time to practice and maybe getting a meta they potentially prefer, they made a serious return to form in the LCQ. They looked very comfortable playing the now more relevant Ramatra Rush, and they made a few other integrations with the lineup to find the best results possible, most notably being Proper coming back to the team after a brief absence to replace his teammate Stalker, who's now taking a break, and despite being gone for a while, Proper looked like he hadn't been missing any playtime at all. He still looked as sharp as ever out there. Additionally, the team showed more willingness to play both of their tank players, and someone actually looked a lot better. If this is Falcons turning the corner, maybe they're actually not cooked as I originally thought. But for now, I think it's best to be at least somewhat cautious when judging them, because even though they did play well in the LCQ, it didn't feel like anybody else even belonged out there, and that includes Zeta Division. Their reluctance to match Falcons composition-wise led to a brutal game, a brutal stomping. Would that still happen if they played a team with a better understanding of the landscape, or are they actually back in top form again? That's what makes it so hard to evaluate. And lastly from Korea is AGG. I was pretty impressed with how they played in Stage 2. This team managed to learn from their mistakes in Stage 1, they made improvements, they stayed consistent, they showed they can be clutch when they need to, and on top of it all, they're punching above against some solid teams. I mean, they destroyed Zeta Division in their third place matchup to clinch a spot here in the Esports World Cup, with all the pressure in the world on them, and they made it look easy out there. They don't have a lot of the superstar talent that you're looking for necessarily, but it's a very well-rounded group, so for that, they've probably got to be in like the low A tier range, maybe better than Falcons, maybe not. We'll see. They've already done it before, so you can't rule it out, I suppose. But I don't think they're necessarily in that S tier just yet. They've got to prove themselves. I could totally see them not only making out of groups, though, but also being better than like all the other non-Korean teams that I've mentioned. They're a threat for sure, and they're no average team. More on these Korean powerhouses later. We'll leave it there and run through some of the other teams who deserve some love. And as usual, the wild card of this tournament comes from our favorite boys out in China, Weibo Gaming, formerly known as Once Again. In the last tournament, I assumed there were some big question marks on if they could really compete or not, and if they were going soft playing in a weaker region. But the answer was they absolutely still can, and that they're very much still a threat in fact. They weren't championship level out in China, but they got 4th place and nearly beat Falcons when they were still in good form. And that was months ago. At this point, everything should be even more refined, and obviously, that makes them pretty scary. We're talking about some of the biggest legends of the Chinese scene who always seem to come to play. The sheer competitive nature of this roster alone makes them troublesome and likely an A-tier opponent. My only question is how competitive will they be if Dive isn't super viable? Things can change, the meta could develop a little bit further, but if we're going off what other teams were playing recently in the last chance qualifier, they'll have to play some Rush. The talent can make up for some of those issues, but will the composition choice diminish the likelihood of a crazy upset? That's what I want to see. Regardless, they are a welcome addition to this tournament that you always have to be on the lookout for. And it's a good thing too, because the other Chinese teams are in a bit of a rougher position. Both in D tier, most would argue. Team CC make it back for another international event, and we see a new face in Rock Esports. CC are running it back with little changes to their team. They snagged yet another 2nd place in China, and even managed to take a map off of Weibo. And the last time they were in this position, they did at least show some fight, so maybe D could be a little disrespectful. But at the same time, this roster is not full of world beaters, and if we're being real, taking a map, if they're lucky, may be their peak. This team struggles to put together a complete series. I think that's the issue. I'd like to see them get past that barrier before I'm willing to give them a serious chance. They're in a pretty tough group as well, so they'll be tested pretty early. The thing is though, they're definitely getting the least attention from their region, and that's because of the third place winner, Overwatch Esports. Choi Se-won left this team a couple of months ago in favor of Vision, and replacing him was Chengdu Hunter's legend Jinmu, as well as Korean Flex DPS player Taejong. And I don't know if it's just the fact that this team has Dia on it, but it makes them so lovable. They have enough talent to not be the worst team out of their region. They're full of well-seasoned veterans over there, but so far they just haven't shown it yet. They can't seem to make it to a finals no matter what they do. I'm hopeful they could possibly steal a game based off of group pairings, but with results and where this team is currently at in mind, they're mostly fodder, and that's probably their best goal they could achieve. Sadly, China is carried by Weibo, at least for now though, so let's leave China there and move on to North America, who maybe have a bit of a better chance of punching above their weight compared to some of the teams we just discussed. GK Esports, Team Liquid, and Sign Esports, who are currently taking the Nightmare roster on loan, made it through North America. All three of them are coming off relatively solid stages for different reasons. Nightmare in particular surprised a lot of people. After their entire roster left, they found success with a brand new one. They were competitive against some of NA's best, and even managed to boot out a heavily favored SSG from qualification at the beginning of the stage. They were firmly a top 3 team at all times, and they just have that dangerous underdog mentality. Their players have a chip on their shoulders, and they feed off of it. They're probably the team I'd be the most concerned about when it comes to pulling off an upset and potentially making it through the groups. The team has so many crazy playmakers that are just playing at such a high level. Painkiller has risen up the ranks lightning fast and is suddenly one of the best tanks out west, and he makes a lot of space for Rocket and Chronic, who are just a disgusting duo. If they get a hold of like a Tracer Sojourn or a Freya setup, they're gonna cook. They have their limitations, and I generally consider them C tier because of the competition and recent results, but they've shown they have the upside of a B tier, just knowing how much they've been able to push the likes of the other adversaries making it out of North America. But GK and Liquid though? Those guys are solid B tier, with GK having the upside of an A, knowing what they accomplished in the last LAN. GK, just like in China, have the potential to make top 3 in this tournament. They've demonstrated an ability to be consistent in a variety of metas, and all their guys thrive in clutch moments. That is the gear that makes this team turn. They never play bad when the game is on the line. This roster has played together for a very long time, and it shows with the synergy and not making so many big mistakes when the game's on the line. This is a tough team for anybody. No moment is too big for them. If there's a Western team with any kind of chance of beating a Korean team, it's gotta be these guys 1000% because they've literally already done it before. If you're new to the scene, I mean, all of the players on this team are worth looking out for. Lethal and Maimon lock it down on DPS. Kuffa provides crazy stability on the front line, and Ultraviolet and Admiral make a lot of plays compared to the average backline. GK are not always the most dominant team in the world, but again, they're able to figure out ways to close out the game every single time. When it's crunch time, they find ways to win, and that's what seriously good teams do. They're a threat to make this tournament unpredictable. Definitely somebody to monitor super close. As for their counterparts in Team Liquid, they're a bit more difficult to get a grasp on. It wasn't the prettiest start in Stage 2, and they lost some tough games, but as they found their footing and Zera got more used to his new team, they started flashing their potential. And all that led to an impressive run where they just fell short to GK in the NA Finals in what was a 7-map series. They managed to push the best team in North America to their limits, while also showing some good mid-game adaptations to make that a series. They were leaps and bounds better compared to their Stage 1 iteration, being so competitive against the top dog and pushing them further than any other NA team had is a positive sign of growth. A lot more comfort and understanding was demonstrated, and that goes for every position. RuPaul and Infected looking more like their old selves, and Tree and Zera figuring out that whole dynamic duo thing. Liquid are in a good place right now. They've shown they have what it takes to be the best team in their region. They just haven't gotten the job done yet. They've got to adapt a little bit quicker mid-game and not dig themselves into such big holes early, because that's what makes it tough. It's tough to come back down big, especially when you're playing heavy hitters like in this upcoming tournament. They can definitely be at the level of Geekay or alexyOWL, hence why I have them in the same tier. But now you've got to make that final step happen and deliver when it matters. Maybe they do it this tournament, maybe they don't. Either way, North America have some good teams on the horizon, and they're going to shake up this competition. But what of EMEA? Can they also make a splash from the West? It certainly feels like a few teams could be in the mix. They've got Virtus Pro, Twisted Minds, and alexyOWL representing them. They all made it through the gauntlet. And out of those three, Twisted Minds and alexyOWL are worth putting some stock into. alexyOWL managed to go from the second best team in EU to the obvious best, showing some meaningful progress across the board. Ziad, much like his counterpart Painkiller in NA, has become a very respectable tank player, and the addition of Kelix to the backline has given this team a more controlling presence overall. What I like about them is that they're a very solid rush team in what seems to be a pretty rush-oriented meta. They're proven on Orisa, Ram, and Malga comps. They also have a deadly Sojourn player in Lapda, and Landon absolutely thrives in what seems to be some pretty relevant flex support heroes in Kiriko and Baptiste. They're in their comfort zone, they're steadily gaining confidence, and they've handily conquered EU, and it feels like they're hungry to do more after coming up short in the previous LAN. They're one of the hometown favorites, and I'd say they have a real shot of top 3 or top 4, or at the very least, the best finisher of the Western teams. With how consistent Junkbuck has been coaching this team and making them look, there's reason to feel confident in them. But strangely, I feel a similar way about Twisted Minds. After a pretty embarrassing Stage 1, they made some major roster changes and immediately looked significantly better, like very obviously the second best team of the region, and the only ones who could actually push alexyOWL. And they maintained that status all the way until the end of the stage. And despite a rough end in that stage finals, I still feel optimistic they can do some damage, like this is only the beginning. Assuming what we saw in the LCQ is close to what the meta could be, there's room for this team to get even better. KSA on Ram and Quartz on Soj is and always will be a nasty combo. My only hope is they maybe rely a little bit less on Symmetra. Fundamentally, she has her uses and she certainly will be relevant on some maps, but not every map. You can't always get away with it. Tracer is just in a really ideal spot right now, and you need to depend more on Psycho because of that, because of how good he can be on that hero and what he's shown in the past. UB kind of felt lost out there in their recent match with alexyOWL, and the moment Sim got banned, Checkmate was dumpstering him. Which is why I'm saying if Twisted Minds want to play up to their potential, there has to be some kind of innovation or improvement with some of their approaches. This is a very high skill ceiling team based on the strengths they have and their tournament history. You never can really count these guys out, especially in LAN, and this event shouldn't be any different knowing the guys they have on the squad. But what of Virtus Pro? Just knowing how their Stage 2 went, they've obviously fallen off. Their performance across most of the stage was a disappointment. The dominance of Stage 1 is gone, and now they're a couple of steps behind. Maybe I'm underrating them a little bit here, but I see VP as more of a C-tier threat rather than B. Realistically, they have the upside to be in the B range, but if we compare them to the top teams of like NA or EU, they're obviously in a bit of a worse situation with more question marks. It would seem that a higher level of competition and the meta changing has led to some adversity, and right now it's difficult to say if they're ready to overcome it, especially knowing how deadly of a group they're in. It'll take nothing short of a miracle for them to make it past that point, and I wish them nothing but the best of luck, cause they're definitely gonna need it. Speaking of good luck, there's also some miscellaneous rosters to get through, which belong in the lowest tier most likely. There's the winner of OWCS Japan, aka Veryl, the Pacific winner, the Gatos Guapos, and the winner of South America, Overwatch Esports. None of these teams should be expected to do much of anything. The difference in talent is a little too difficult to overcome here. I think the team with the best chance of even taking a series is probably Viral. They were the best Japanese team by far in their region the entire stage. I mean, they didn't lose a single game, and most of them were blowouts. A team that stuck together for a long time, we're talking multiple years, continued their reign of terror over there. The only difference is that they may have upgraded by getting a couple of Korean imports, most notably, at least in my opinion, being former Gen G DPS Top Dragon. It's a likable team, and they may not even be the worst team in their tier, but beyond that, there's not a lot of hope, just because Japan as a region is playing catch up to the rest of the world still. I'm hoping they'll get there eventually, but they're not there quite yet, and getting out of groups is likely out of the question. It's more so about showing some progress for the region as a whole. Be competitive, maybe still a series. That's what you want to do. That's how you could walk away and feel like you did something. Until further notice, though, that's probably their best upside available. But more than anything, I think people likely will be drawn towards the Gatos Guapos. This roster sees Rack Attack returning to play after an extended break, and he's joined by the likes of Punk and Color Hex. Not the greatest team in the world, but damn, they'll be pretty easy to cheer for with some of these names. If they can even make one series competitive, I think that would be pretty huge. For the sake of the homies, let's hope that they pull off some magic. Aside from that, not much else to comment on. Lastly, we have the South America qualifier, Zocorp. It's mostly a smorgasbord of miscellaneous EU players and a couple of Brazilians. I mean, they low-key made a pretty good run in the bracket after a mid-stage, so credit goes where it's due there. But unfortunately, from a roster standpoint, this has got to be the weakest team in the tournament, if not like bottom 2 or 3. No disrespect, I mean, it's just sadly the truth knowing so many of the heavy hitters that are in this thing. There's not much else to say, so let's just leave it there and move on to the tournament. Let's start off with the group stage. It's worth noting only the top 2 advance, and that the first match of each group is first to 2 instead of 3 for some reason. And again, there will be multiple streams up where you have to watch the games, but here's an overview of all 4 groups for you once again. A lot of this feels pretty straightforward and rather predictable. The exception of that probably being Group A. On paper, this is the group of death. Falcons, AGG, Virtus Pro, and Weibo in the same group. Virtus Pro being arguably the worst team in a group is a crime. This group is a slugfest with so many possibilities. My personal prediction for Group A is that Falcons and Weibo advance. It may be a little weird to have any confidence in Falcons whatsoever with how they've looked recently, but after the LCQ, I feel it's in my best interest to just not write them off too early. From my perspective, it feels like Proper coming back alongside a more rush-heavy meta has given Falcons some life. When Proper can be a leader and dive isn't such a hard focus, good things usually happen for this franchise, and history would back it up. And if someone can be as dominant as what I witnessed in the LCQ on a signature RAM, they may even get first out of their group. Maybe I'm pushing it a little too much just because of the LCQ, and maybe it ends up biting me, but I've been burned a bunch of times by doubting Falcons in the past, so let's not make that mistake this early on again, even if they aren't at full strength. Some of you may be arguing that AGG and Weibo should be getting out of this group because they absolutely stomped Falcons not that long ago, but that game was played a lot differently than what we see right now, and that was amongst some other confusion going on with Falcons. Now there's no more Sombra dive, no confusion going on, and just the standard push and pull that Falcons have shown some good discipline on in the rush scenario. And a similar thing applies in a matchup with Weibo, I'd say. Considering their rivalry the last year and a half, it's probably a super close game, but assuming rush is good and Falcons don't ego dive mirror, they should win. They proved that in China. Rush plus a timely Winston ban should set them up nicely for success. Now, if this theory is totally wrong and they're just playing dive out the wazoo amongst other things, I'd probably be concerned, but we'll cross that bridge if we have to. As for my Weibo pick over AGG, I think they showed us they're still more than good enough to be a high-level team back in Stage 1. This is a pretty tough group, but even if they can't play all their favorite picks all the time, you just have to believe in them because of the magic these last few years and that experience factor and the clutch gene of Shy, Leave, and Gushue. It probably takes them where they need to be, at least in terms of the group stage. AGG to me are probably going to get third over Virtus Pro. I mean, they're a good team and they have a good chance of making it out here. It probably could depend on the meta and if Falcons really are back or not, but they don't move me enough personally, even if they have found some success recently. I think more than anything, they're just a little too inexperienced and they've taken advantage of some weak teams that aren't in the best place, like Zeta and Falcons, for example. AGG have shown me they do belong, and it wouldn't be shocking if they make this super close, and if Falcons are still trash, I'm probably going to be wrong. But do or die with some of the players involved in Group A, I honestly do think they fall short. And yeah, it goes without saying, Virtus Pro, not necessarily because they aren't that good, but more so because they're in such a tough group, are not going to make it out. Third or fourth place at best for them. It's just too stacked for them to handle. And alongside some of their recent struggles, it's tough to feel very confident in their abilities. Group B is very straightforward with Crazy Raccoon, Liquid, Varel, and Rock. Obviously, Liquid and Crazy Raccoon are miles ahead. They are getting first and second, respectively. Japan's unproven, and Rock is just nowhere near good enough. I suppose the point of interest with Group B lies in if 1, Liquid can even make a match with Crazy Raccoon competitive, but 2, who gets third place? Rock have the more known players on their team, but they may not be all that better than Varel, who are a lot more experienced and just have better synergy overall. I personally am hoping that Varel wins that game just for the sake of Japan's progression, but I do slightly prefer Rock as a team talent-wise. Japan's best feats just don't really move me, and it's hard for me to see them beating a team with Belos Ria, Mali, Taejung, and Dia. Looking into Group C, it's clearly alexyOWL and Geekay, the number 1 from NA and EU, who should take down CC and Zocorp with ease. The only question is, who wins the battle between NA and EU's best? This very well could be the most entertaining matchup of the entire tournament. Cinema worthy. If I were to pick between the two, I'd lean slightly towards Geekay. I wouldn't necessarily say the meta favors one team or the other, it's just that Geekay has the insane clutch gene, and they're maybe just a little more battle-tested over the last several months with some of the tough games they've played. Again, it shows that they just know what to do when the game's on the line. They're less prone to those mistakes. And at least to me, Admiral, Ultraviolet, and Kuffa are a bit stronger in totality compared to Landon, Calyx, and Ziad. Higher upside there. Either way, I am very much looking forward to this match, as I think it probably will go the distance and be one of the best of the entire event. And finally, there's Group D. The thing that decides if it's any good or not is Nightmare. They've done well to get this far, but Twisted Minds and T1 are tough customers. The team needs to play nothing short of perfect here. I'm talking a DPS painkiller masterclass, and the backline really stepping up like they did in that matchup with SSG. It takes all of that to make something happen. They've got to play perfect, and that tells me they're likely coming in third. That's just a little too much to deal with. T1 first place, Twisted Mind second feels like the most likely outcome. T1 might be the second best team in this tournament. They're playing the best Overwatch they have all year, and they're on a serious heater if you look at their win streak up until that matchup against Crazy Raccoon. But I wouldn't be totally surprised if Twisted give them some kind of challenge. They're known for toppling Titans, or at least making them sweat, and they themselves have shown a ton of improvement lately. But just knowing what T1 are capable of and historically how the West does against Korea, it's hard to not put T1 in first place. In summary, my group stage winners will be Falcons, Weibo, Liquid Raccoon, AQ Geekay, and T1 Twisted. Now for the playoffs and the actual tournament winner itself, the final 2 days. There's really not that many directions this can go, at least in terms of the winner. The bracket layout is subject to change, so I won't really put that much stock into it because it depends on how the groups go, but my personal winner, no matter what, will be Crazy Raccoon. In the current metagame, they are a lot more vulnerable. They may not dominate through everybody, but something tells me that what happened in Korea just makes me think they run away with this thing anyway somehow. They literally didn't take half of one of the biggest tournaments of the year seriously, and they still won with relative ease. This team has lost just one international tournament these last 2 seasons. These boys come to play when the lights are at their brightest, and I get the feeling that nothing short of sweeping every stage will satisfy them after last year's shortcomings. I'll continue to pin home this point as to why I think they're just so much better. They have the best team overall. There's so many beasts, so many Lanimals to account for who you know are going to show up. And we know that they'll find ways to force some things they want to play that aren't necessarily meta in some scenarios, because that's just what they've done throughout their existence. Generally though, I'm expecting massive heroics from Shu in like a Bap Curie setup, Lip for being a beast on Sojourn, Heesang who's maybe playing the best Overwatch of his career. It's so overwhelming. Honestly, unless they're playing Falcons in the finals, it's hard to say that anybody could beat Crazy Raccoon. Falcons are the only team to do it consistently, and they're not exactly in perfect shape right now, which arises a lot of doubts about that, and if they could even make it to the finals, and even then they still might lose, because we've seen it happen a couple of times as well in favor of Crazy Raccoon in that rivalry. Now, maybe it could be T1 this time. I mean, they have beaten Crazy Raccoon twice this season, and they took 2 maps off of them in the Korea finals. But I'm not so sure, man. It feels like Falcons are the only ones that have their numbers consistently. So it's very hard to go against the best team from the best region, you know? As for some of my other bracket predictions, I guess I'll just say that T1 loses to Crazy Raccoon in the finals. That feels like the most logical outcome. I'll say it's like a 5 or a 6 map game. T1 are the only ones who have pushed Crazy Raccoon consistently this stage, so that feels right to me. I mean, they are on a pretty big hot streak outside of that matchup in the finals. Donghack looks like a top tank in the game right now. Zest, like I said before, has found his form, and the backline feels whole. They can play rush, they can play dive, and they've got a pretty nasty venture comp as well. If there was ever a time for a non-Falcons Crazy Raccoon finals, it's likely right now. But hey man, if Falcons make the finals instead, not going to be shocked. That's typically how history has gone. My other prediction though is that none of the Western teams make it to the top 4, and they probably all get eliminated in the first round. GK or alexyOWL likely have the best odds to go against that, but it doesn't look good based off of the format of this tournament and how the bracket plays from the groups. It's basically guaranteed that no Western team can play each other in the first round, barring any crazy outcomes, and again, this is not a double elimination tournament. Twisted Minds probably play Crazy Raccoon unless they somehow upset T1. Liquid probably play T1 unless they beat Crazy Raccoon. Then alexyOWL and GK both play opponents from the group of death. And unless Falcons are still trash, you're staring down 2 potential juggernauts most likely. The only chance is if AGG or VP make it through, and even then, it's not exactly an easy matchup. This bracket was basically built to cuck the wacky storylines and purely give us battles between the top Eastern teams. And it's a single elimination bracket as well, so there's no second chances. At this point, we can only hope for another nightmare-esque upset. Single elim does mean a lot of pressure, so we just need one little slip up. And again, I think the less dive we see, the better chance for these Western rosters. But historically in OWCS, the West has done poorly in the head-to-head, and it's difficult to see that changing. I'm hoping to be wrong, but this tournament feels like it was set up for the East. The tournament begins in a few short days on the 31st, so I suppose we'll see what fate has in store for us shortly. And that is where we're going to leave things for now. Let me know what you think of this upcoming tournament in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this video and or found it helpful and you want more videos like this in the future. Peace.